talking about friends or foes in terms of participant interaction in training and in workshop setting. And on one hand, you have this thing where you want to give everybody as much attention as possible. People thrive and long for individual experience, for being seen, for being heard, for individual feedback. On the other hand, you're not going through this experience alone, and when you are working together as a team, when you're working together with other people, you can learn so much, right? In one of the previous videos, we talked about the 70-20-10, and the 20, which is observing others, is something you can hack. It's something you can actually do in the training. And what I mean specifically, so two things. The first one is my experience from the trainings. That the valuable time for the participants is not only when I actually give them feedback and I work with them, or my co-trainer does it. Sometimes that's somebody's name. Sometimes it's actually putting people together in groups of one-on-one, or sort of like three people in a group in a breakout room together, and just asking them to take a look at each other's materials, especially if it's a presentation training or presenting analytical information training. Then people testing these things on each other. It's such a charming moment. People come back and they say, "Oh, I didn't expect others would be so helpful." And it's crazy. And at the same time, it's a fantastic way to show your participant how invested and how eager others are to help them and to support them most of the time. And the same goes for the leaders, the same goes for their organization, for their colleagues. It is possible, and it does happen, but for the most part, whenever you're presenting, people don't go, "Jesus, I hope they're going to fail. This really sucks. These slides are awful. I can't wait for the end of it." It does happen. At the same time, that's not the reality, and your leader wants you to succeed, and your colleagues want you to give a good presentation, and all of you want to move the business forward and to have good relationships. So what I'm driving at is testing things on each other, and what I'm trying to show my participants is to create this environment where they get to test something on their colleagues, because I invite them to, because I put them into breakout rooms, so that after the training they would be encouraged to do it on their own. So it's sort of like, instead of telling them and encouraging them to talk to others and to bulletproof their presentation with others as a sparring partner, I put them in a situation where they experience it. This is this is a Kolb cycle, right, in education of adults. They experience it, and then we make meaning out of it. So, okay, we've experienced you working with others and getting feedback from others. Now let's have a chat how that was for you, what just happened, and why that was important. So that's one side of the things, right? So you have this people are working together, they get to bounce ideas off each other, and they also get to see that others are supportive of them, that others want them to succeed, which means that later on in their regular work, when they have a presentation, they can bulletproof it on somebody else. And building on that, the curse of knowledge, or I think that's what it's called, is we forget what it's like to be a beginner once we're good at something. It sounds like a general statement, but at the same time, I see it over and over and over again. I forget what it's like to be somebody who doesn't know anything about training. And some of the things that seem obvious to me really don't seem obvious to other people. For example, now in preparing for TEDx Warsaw with the TED speakers, one of the questions we ask ourselves during the preparation process is, does this talk start in a place where an average person in the audience is able to join and is able to follow? And that's a challenging one, because for the speaker, sometimes the place they like to start is very different to that sort of place where the other people can understand or engage with them. And what to do, it depends. But for the training purposes, and if we're talking about a business presentation, if we're talking about presenting analytical data, bulletproofing or testing your presentation on people who are working with you, people who are working with people in your audience, will give you a lot. And if you don't believe me, just go and try it. Go and try it, and a surprising thing that will happen is that people will be eager to support you. I'm not saying all of them. Sometimes some people might be busy, but in general, people are way more eager to support you than you can imagine. So that's part one, or then that you can sort of think at first. Part two, when it comes to friends or foes, it was a lesson I had from playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've played it once in my life, and there's another project we're working on with a colleague of mine related to helping kids learn English. And as a part of that project, my friend said, "Hey, can we create something that is sort of similar to Dungeons and Dragons? And I was skeptical. But then what I tend to do is, okay, let's try this, right? Like, I haven't tried this before. I know what I've heard of it so far. Super stereotypical, watching Big Bang Theory and thinking about nerds. But since I've been a nerd myself for many, many, many years, I was like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. And I posted something on Facebook, and a bunch of people reached out, and they said, hey, we can play this together. So we created these fake characters. For example, I was big and strong and not very intelligent as a character, and everybody was making fun of my intelligence in this game. That was a new experience because I'm used to slightly different treatment. But that was very, very interesting. But why am I telling you this in the context of participant interaction? Is that in Dungeons and Dragons, the team works together against the monsters, right? So if you've ever played it, if you've never played it like I've never played it before, each of you has a character. There's a person who kind of controls the game, the dungeon master, and you go through a series of quests, and you resolve these quests by engaging in fights, by making allies, by pretty much the whole time all you do is you practice your imagination. I could talk about that for quite a while. On a completely different note, we're focusing on participant and on the training. The participants are together on a quest. They're not on a quest against each other. They need to work together so that they can win as a team. And each one of them has a different strengths, right? So, for example, I was this strong and mighty and not very clever. So whenever somebody needed to fight somebody else or open big doors, it was me. But at the same time, we had somebody who could steal. We had somebody who was a magician. We had somebody who was a cleric, and each one of us had a different skill set. And in the training, you'll have somebody who's more open, somebody who's brave, somebody who's for whom it's easy to speak up. But you'll also have people who are rather shy and who are rather withdrawn, but very analytical and extremely insightful, like in any team. And in training, you want to draw that out. And as a trainer, for me, it's like, okay, now with this team, we're going on this quest. So yeah, those are some of the thoughts I had today as I was hiking down by myself after hiking up together. And to wrap up, so the first part of this was encouraging you to stress test your ideas on your colleagues or people who understand the needs of your audience. Either they are in the same position, in the same role, or they work together with your audience. So they can actually tell you, does it make sense to them? For example, if you're in supply chain and they're in marketing, does it make sense what you're saying? That's one side of things. The second thing in regards to participant interaction is the 70-20-10 and the 20% in observing others. So for example, if I have cases for participants to solve or presentations to give, while they receive feedback from me, others get to observe and also take something from that. And then finally, sort of thinking of your participants as a quest, thinking of your participants as a team, and then you as a trainer, if you're into Dungeons and Dragons or a Dungeon Master, and you're putting that experience together. And I've just fallen through the nose. I think it's time to finish. If you have any questions, please reach out. And thank you so much for following these videos. It seems I'm not alone anymore. Ciao, ciao.